Hey you guys, Miss Fonstock here. We're going to talk about something very different today, which is going to be a nice break for some of you guys who need that break from slope. Um, a lot of us do well on this section of 8th grade math just because it is so different and our brain needs that break. But don't forget about slope. We will move into it after this and we'll kind of hang with it for the rest of the year. So really quickly, this is called reading two-way tables. A two-way table is literally a table that has a measurement of two different items or two different categories. So for example, in this one, we're talking about pets because that's what dogs and cats are, and your gender, so either you're male or female. So that's our two items or two categories that we're going to be talking about. And what you do normally is you'll read the graph and then interpret it or answer questions about it. And some of the questions, as you can see right here, have like the word percentage on it, which is actually a 7th grade standard. You talked about it a lot in 7th grade, and so it should be somewhat familiar to you guys. All right, so back to the top. We have cats, dogs, which are our pets, and male and female, which is our gender. And then we have the total category. So real quickly, I'm going to teach you how to read these. You can read them either by row. So for example, this is the cats row, and it looks like 5 males owned cats, 25 female owned cats, and there is a total of 30 cat owners. Or you can look at it by the column, and I'll do this female column. So 25 females owned a cat. If I keep going further, 15 females owned a dog. Or if I go even further, 40 females were asked about whether they had a cat or dog. So we call this our amount of people that were surveyed. As you guys know, surveys can be sent out, in your emails, anywhere online. They're always wanting you to take surveys. You can do something really simple like we would in class, where we just ask you to raise your hand or vote on something. But another important thing I need you to notice is this number right here. So it's what we call the total. That's how Miss Cooper and I refer to it, as your total. But a lot of times you might just see it referred to as the grand total. But this is just how many people were totaled all together. So we have 30 people who own cats, 45 people who own dogs. And if you add those up, because that's how you find total, you add, I'll write a little addition symbol right here, you get 75. But same thing for this row. You had 35 males who were surveyed, plus the 40 females that were surveyed, to give you a grand total of 75. So your total this way should be 75, and your total that way should be 75. So now that we know how to read this chart, hopefully we can now go and answer some questions about it. So the very first one's super easy. How many males have a cat? So that's just you understanding how to read the chart. So males and cats, that's 5. So 5 males. And choose purple. All right. The next one is, what percent of males have a cat? So of males is important to recognize, and we're going to talk about this especially on the next slide. When it's talking about what percent of males have a cat, we need to make sure that we're only looking at this male area. Okay, so I know that 5 males have a cat, but of all of the males, that's 35. There were 35 males. So to figure out a percentage, if you remember from 7th grade, we talked a lot about proportions, and percents are always out of 100. Your percent is out of 100. But there's another way to do this, and I'll show you a second way here in a moment. So it was 5 males had a cat out of 35 of the males that were surveyed, because it says of the males. So I would do 35 on the bottom. Now, again, from 7th grade, we would do cross multiply, which is 5 times 100 is 500. and then you would divide by your last number. So 500 divided by 35, cross multiply and divide, and that would give you 14.2. So I'm just going to say 14, and that would be 14%. So that would be your final answer, 14%. There is a second way that I'll show you, and I'll put it on the other side of this, and it's just going back to elementary school and the fact that you have a part over a whole, and you just divide the part over the whole. Our part was 5, our whole was 35, and you just divide. Now this time you will get 0.14, but to change a decimal into percent, you just move the decimal 2 times. So it's 14%. So either way is fine with us. You can set up the whole proportion if you need to, cross multiply and divide, or you can just divide your part divided by your whole. All right, so the next one is similar. What percent of females, that's important, of females have a dog? So that would be, let me erase this. We know that there are 40 females and 15 of them have a dog. So of the females, we'll do part over whole. But again, you can set up the proportion if you need to. Already forgot my numbers. 15 of them had a dog, and there were 40 females because it says of the females only. So 15 divided by 40. This one's going to be weird. 0.375. And it's okay that it's weird, but remember you move the decimal twice, and that's going to give you 37.5%, which you can also just round up and call 38%. There is some rounding that's involved when we do percentages, but if you were to call this 37, like with Miss Cooper and I, we would be okay with that. But iExcel sometimes, you guys know, is a bit picky. So make sure you, on iExcel, round the way it wants you to round. All right, example 4, what percent of people, so this time we're talking about of all of the people that were surveyed, how many have a cat? So out of the whole amount of people that were surveyed, which we know, we know that there are 75 people that were surveyed. And if I look at how many have a cat, I need to go all the way to the bottom, and it's 30. So 30, again, we'll do part over whole, of the 75 have a cat. And 30 divided by 75 is 0.4. I also like that this came up, because remember, you still have to move it 2 times, which means you'd have to fill in a 0 and call that not 4%, but 40%. So 40% of the people have a cat. So just a lot of division. Make sure you set up your part over whole correctly. Make sure you're reading the keywords like of all the people or just of the females. And then we're going to move into the second slide. Now the second slide is a little different. We still have gender, meaning we still have our boys and our girls, but our second category, because this is a two-way table, is cell phones and no cell phones. So we're talking about boys and girls who may have a cell phone or who may not have a cell phone. Something else you'll notice is that not all information is given to you, but we've talked about before how total just means to add. So if we look at the boys category, I know how many have no cell phone, and I do know the total, but because I don't have anything to add right here to get to my total, I'm going to have to work backwards, and the opposite of addition is subtraction. So I'm going to subtract these numbers. So 145 minus the 95 would give us 50. All right, and then we can move on to this next column, because now that I have boys and girls, I can figure out the total for the cell phone column. And 50 plus 82 would give us 132. All right, again, looking at this row, I have this, how many people have cell phones, how many people have no cell phones. I can add those to get my grand total. So 132 plus 148, and I just did that wrong in my calculator, 280. All right. Now, I don't have anything to add with the boy column because I don't know the girls, but I do know the total. But again, because I don't have anything to add, I'm going to have to work backwards and I'm going to have to subtract. So 280 minus the 145, and that would give me 135. That would be my 280. And then I can look at this two ways. I can look at the girls row and subtract, or I can look at the no cell phone column and subtract. But either way, I should get the same answer. So 135 minus 82, I'm doing the girls row, that's going to give me 53. Now, something that is important to note that you may want to do on your own is just to check or double check that you got the right answers. Like add these up and make sure it still equals 280. Add these up and make sure it still equals 280, and kind of go through and do all of the rows and columns. I don't really unfortunately have time for that. Our video would be extra long. So I'm going to look at this next column, or this next table, excuse me. Now I have already typed something here that I would like for you guys to type out. It's this relative frequency. So this chart is left blank. Although it's the same thing, like we're still talking about boys and girls, we're still talking about cell phones and no cell phones. But this chart is not going to have regular numbers in it. This chart is going to have what we call relative frequency numbers in it. And what that means is we're going to go ahead and take all of the numbers from the top, and we're going to go ahead and look for the decimal. And that decimal is what you can use to make your percentage. So I'm going to go through and work these out. I'll work out the first row with you, or I'll work out the first column actually with you guys. And then we'll look at all the other ones together in a minute. So if you were to start with the boys, I know that there are 50 boys. And there were 280 people total. So that's our part and that's our whole. And if I divide that, like I said we would, it's always division. 50 divided by 280 would give you 0.17. And there's an 8 after that. So it's actually 0.178. So I'm going to round that to 0.18. So 0.18, which we know would be 18%. Now I'm going to switch colors and do the girl column. The girl column's part is 82. The whole, meaning the whole amount of people, is 280. And if I were to divide that, 82 divided by 280, I would get 0.29, which again would be 29% if we were to make it a percentage. And then last, the total for cell phone, that's how I would read that. This is the total for the cell phone column. It would be 132 divided by the 280. So 132 divided by 280. I'm doing this on my calculator like you can. It's 0.47, or again, I could make that a percentage and call it 47%. So I want you to pause the video, go through, finish the rest, and then press play when you're ready to check. All right, guys, so something interesting I wanted to point out is this last one gave you 1. Because 280 divided by 280 is 1 whole. But remember, we still have to move the decimal 2 times. So to do that, I had to add 2 imaginary zeros, and it becomes 100%. Because when you come to that grand total, it should be 100%. That's where you had all of your people listed. There were 280 people. Something else to make note of, when you add these up, like on the columns or the rows, they don't always exactly equal what you need it to be. And that's because we've had to round. So here's an example. 0.47 plus 0.52, that equals 0.99 or 99%. But guys, 99% is really close to 100%, so don't stress out. Just know it's not perfect because we had to round these decimals. All right, also something to make note of. These percentages amounts were out of 280, so it was out of all of the people. And that's this question right here. So out of all of the students, what percentage does not have a cell phone? Well, no cell phone. All of the students, so 146 out of the 280, that's 0.52 or 52%. So because we did the relative frequency chart, it was very easy to answer that question. Now let's go back to number 1. Number 1 says how many boys do not have a cell phone. It doesn't say anything about percents, it just says how many boys. So I'm going to use the top chart. Boys with no cell phone, that's 95. All right. What percent of girls? So I need to figure out what percent of girls have a cell phone. This won't help me anymore because this is out of all of the students, not of the girls only. But there were 135 girls, and it says have a cell phone. So 82 out of 135. So 82 girls have a cell phone out of 135 girls that were surveyed. And that is, typing it in my calculator, 0.6, and I'm going to round it to 61, which as a percentage is 61%. All right, next one, number 4. How many students do not have a cell phone? Again, that doesn't say percentage, just how many students do not have a cell phone. So no cell phone. How many students? It doesn't say boy or girl, so just how many students? That's 146. And then last, what percent of boys, there's our keyword again, of boys do not have a cell phone? Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to use this chart that we made again because remember that was out of the total. So of the boys, and it's no cell phone. So of the boys, I have 145 boys and no cell phone is 95. So 95 out of the 146 boys, was it 46? I already forgot my memory. Nope, it was 45. I knew that wasn't right. That's why I questioned myself. So 95 out of the 145, which would give you 60. I'm going to round this to 0.66 or 66%. So I hope that helped you. I made the relative frequency chart, this one right here, because you will see it just a little bit on one of the IXLs. So speaking of IXLs, and actually before we move on, I just wanted everyone to know that I am really, really, really enjoying the Cobra Kai show right now. That show about the Karate Kid. I'm totally into it. It's on Netflix. Go and watch it if you haven't. You may need that for your future Zoom. Just stash it away in your head. But moving on, we're going to look at 3 different problems that you're going to see on IXL. Some start really easy. Some are a little bit harder, but we'll walk through them together. So we do know right here by looking at the keywords that it wants us to simplify any fractions that we might have. So probability, what is the probability that a randomly selected cloud was observed in the morning and was marked as stratocumulus? So some things you need to know. That word probability, guys, it's really just what percent, because probability is a fraction, okay? And it just wants us to simplify those fractions instead of making them a percentage. So I'll work this one out with you. So randomly selected cloud in the morning, so we're looking at the mornings, because we have mornings and afternoons up here in our chart, and it wants to know that it was a stratocumulus. So, something that I don't know if you noticed is that it didn't give you a total, like at all. So, out of all of these, there were 7 as a total for the stratocumulus. There were 12 stratus, so I can add that right here as a total. And then I need another total category right here. It totally didn't give you any of that, did it? 8 plus 5, as you guys know, is 13. Sorry, I had a bit of a brain fart. And then the 2 plus 4 is just 6. Now, we've got to figure out our grand total, which would be right here. Let's check it both ways. 13 plus 6 is 19, and 7 plus 12 is also 19. So we know that our grand total is 19. So that may be what we need. I may have done too much work, but we're just going to reread the question. In the morning, how many were stratocumulus? So I just need to know out of all of the morning ones. There were 13 morning ones. Because if I go all the way over to morning, I only have 13 total. And 5 of them were stratocumulus. Now, 5 divided by 13 doesn't simplify. So in iExcel, you can type in 5 over 13. But if it did simplify as a fraction, guys, it wants you to keep it as a fraction. You don't have to make it a decimal and you don't have to make it a percent. But just make sure that it could be simplified, like check in your calculator first. But 5 over 13 is as simplified as you can make it. All right, moving on. We're almost finished. Rick has 150 students, okay, and it says it right here also. We're talking about milk, chocolate milk, and dark milk. So you would need to fill in these sections in order to answer this question, okay? And it says how many more girls prefer milk than boys? Well, we need to figure out how many, prefer milk chocolate. So we need to figure out how many prefer milk chocolate compared to the boys. We need to actually figure out these numbers. So we need to work backwards. And it looks like we need to start with this one. So it would be 60 minus 28, or 66, excuse me, minus 28. Sorry, I'm having to clear up my calculator. That's 38. All right. And then now that we have the total and dark chocolate, we can subtract to figure out the boys. So 74 minus 38, that would give you 36. And again, now that we know this total and the boys, we can subtract to get the girls. So 84 minus 36, that would give you 48. So how many more girls prefer milk chocolate? So this was how many boys liked milk chocolate. This was how many girls liked milk chocolate. How many more? That's like asking, can you find the difference? And we all know to find the difference, you subtract. So you would just need to subtract those and get your answer of 12. So 12 more girls prefer milk chocolate than boys. All right, last one. For this one, it actually gives you the relative frequencies, those decimals that we've already talked about. So you'll just need to know that this is like 18%, this is 24%, 42%, and again, remember your grand total is always 100%. That's why it looks kind of weird right here. And then you would need to go and answer the questions, and for this one it says true. So residents of Greenville prefer jogging to swimming. So here's Greenville. Jogging is higher, 38% is higher than swimming, so that would be a yes. People who prefer jogging are more likely to be from Fairfield. Fairfield people were 20%, Greenville people were 38%, so no, I think more people from Greenville prefer jogging. So that's a no. All right, there is an association between the town of a person lives and their exercise preference. So, I mean, maybe, yes, but Fairfield is kind of like too close to call. And Greenville is more split. Like this is a bit higher than this one. So, I don't know if I would go with that. I think that the the Fairfield numbers are too close. And then there is no association. Yeah, I agree. I don't think the town, in this instance, I don't think the town really matters about what your preference is. All right, so sorry for the long video. Hopefully that helps. And we will see you in Zoom.